So now we're going to finish our roulade, which is relatively simple. What we need to have is some saran wrap laid out and put your sponge on top of it. If there's a section of sponge that doesn't have pattern, you want that at the top. Okay, so you want the most pattern closest to you and the least amount of pattern furthest away. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to start whipping our cream, and we want this to be at about medium peak. So we're going to do the same with this whipped cream like we do with everything else that we whip. We're going to start slow and gradually increase the speed. Then what we're going to do while that's whipping is we're going to put some maple syrup on this sponge. So any egg-based sponge like this tends to taste a little bit dry. So we're just going to soak it with some maple syrup. You just want to take your pastry brush and brush it all over the cake, sort of soften it, give it a little extra moisture. But really, you could use a simple syrup flavored with anything. You could use herbs, you could use alcohol, you could use fruit, like a lemon syrup. And simple syrup is just 50% sugar and 50% water by weight, so equal parts. You might not need quite all of the syrup that you've given in the recipe, but you want to use a fair amount of it. Okay, and we're just going to let that soak in while we get the rest of our filling ready. So you want some nice cold cream. We're going to whip that. You want to melt your chocolate either in the microwave or over a double boiler. So I've done mine in the microwave. And you want it to be warm, but not hot. Okay? So we're going to put that into a bowl just to make it easier to fold in the cream when it's ready. And I melted both the dark and the milk together. The reason we're mixing them is that milk chocolate might be a little bit too sweet and dark chocolate might be a little too bitter. So I've combined the two, and we're just going to make a really simple mousse. Now we can turn up our cream a little bit. Now that I've got a good base of little bubbles. So you want to be really careful not to over whip your cream. You just want it at a nice medium peak. So I've got a good sideways flop on that. So now we're going to do the same method that we've done when we folded anything in. We're going to do a 1/3, 2/3 method. So I'm going to take about a third of the cream and I'm going to work really quickly adding the cream because the cream is cold and my chocolate is warm, and I want to make sure that I get it all in there without it turning to chocolate chips. So you can stir pretty aggressively. And make sure it's really, really well combined, this bit. Good. Now we're going to add the rest of the cream and we're going to fold gently. So now, fold quickly, but gently. So same technique, down the center of the bowl, turn the bowl, flop it over on itself. This prevents little hard bits of chocolate from seizing. You don't want little chocolate chips in your mousse. You want it to be nice and smooth. And once it's all one cohesive color and it's nice and smooth, we're good to go. So now what we want to do is we want to spread it onto our cake, but I want you to imagine a section of the cake about this wide where we don't want any mousse at all, closest to us. So I'm just going to spread it on there. And just like we did when we were spreading the cake batter, you want to move your spatula side to side first. Worry about the width being nice and even, and then, the length, then worry about the width. You want to make sure it gets right to the edges, but don't try and spill it over the outside edge. Now we have a nice even layer. I just have this one little section here I'd like to clean up, so I'm just going to take my spatula and move it into this corner where it's a little bit light. Okay, so we've got our filling all spread out, nice and even across. Now we just need to roll it up. So starting at the top, it's kind of like rolling sushi. You want to pick up the saran wrap and use that to help you. And so you want to sort of fold it over using the saran wrap as a guide. Not super tight, but reasonably tight. And then you want to use the saran wrap to help you roll it. So help it roll over. Don't roll the saran wrap up inside. And give it one final roll until you get the seam onto the bottom. Then you want to take your saran wrap and tuck it in on both sides. We'll wrap it up the rest of the way. And now you want to put this in the freezer until it's frozen solid. So this might take overnight for you. It might take a couple of hours, just depending on how your freezer is. Once it's frozen, I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so our roulade has come out of the freezer. It's almost completely frozen. And what you want to do is you want to unwrap it and pop it out onto a cutting board. Loosen up the saran wrap from the edges if it got stuck. Now, what we want to do is create two different portions from this. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm just gently going to trim both edges so that they're nice and straight. Then I'm going to use my ruler to measure across and make sure I'm cutting it exactly in half. So I've got 16 inches across once I've trimmed it. So I want to cut it exactly on the 8-inch mark. And there we go. You could decorate the top of this. Could serve it in slices. You could serve it whole. It's a great dessert to show in a showcase. It's really bright and colorful. People really like it. And it's relatively simple. The flavors can change. The pattern can change. You can do whatever you want with it. But that is the decorated roulade.